what you can't explain. It's coming back again. I can see it now, I can see it now. What you can't explain, coming back again.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and thank you for joining me for another Coffee and Crime Time video. And listen, I know that we have talked about the Gabby Petito case before. We covered it as it was happening, and in the months after, Derek and I also covered it pretty extensively on Crime Weekly. Like the Shanann Watts case, this one with Gabby has been on my mind a lot. It's always on my mind and it's very close to my heart. So when a new 3-part series about Gabby Petito was dropped on Netflix, I decided to watch it, not because I thought that anything monumental or unknown would be revealed. I have a pretty strong familiarity with the case, but simply because I think that there's so many important lessons to be learned from Gabby's story, and I believe that many women watching may see something of Gabby in themselves and may be able to, identify red flags in their own relationships that could end up saving their time, their energy, and their lives in some situations. However, as I was watching the series, something happened. I did develop a better understanding of Brian Laundrie's life, specifically his relationship with his mother, Roberta Laundrie. And my brain started making all of these connections that led me to theorize that the way Brian was treated by his mother and the dynamic that they had, it may have actually been an important part of who he became and why he ended the life of a woman he claimed he loved more than anything in the world. I also want to say that regardless of what we discuss here, this is obviously not me giving anyone a pass or trying to find an excuse for Brian Laundrie and men like him. I think that if you've watched me before, if you're new here, you might think that's happening, but if you've watched me before, you know that I have no forgiveness for Brian Laundrie. At all. I hate him. I hate him. Ultimately, I do believe that the things you decide to do in your life are your choice, and plenty of people have horrible childhoods and carry their trauma with them through life, and those people actively choose not to hurt others. So ultimately, like I said, it doesn't matter what's happened to you, what you decide to do with what's happened to you and how you decide to live your life and conduct yourself with others is a sign of your character, and Brian Laundrie's character is absolute garbage. Now, I've done a lot of research for this video, found a lot of interesting studies that support my theory, found a lot of interesting things in the docuseries that kind of tie into this, so we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to dive in, but first, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, GlassesUSA.com. GlassesUSA.com is one of the largest prescription eyewear retailers in the U.S., offering thousands of top brands like Ray-Ban, Gucci, Oakley, and almost any brand you can think of, starting at just $39. That's up to 70% off retail prices. Now, I've been shopping with Glasses USA for years, I think since honestly 2019, and I love that with Glasses USA, I don't have to leave my house, I don't have to go to a store where I feel rushed to make a decision about something as important as a pair of glasses that I'm going to wear every single day. If you think about it and you wear glasses, you wear your glasses more than you wear anything else, and I want to make sure that the glasses I choose are not only going to help my vision, which is their purpose, but suit my face, shape, and style. And Glasses USA allows me to do this from the comfort of my own home with their amazing app, Perfect Match AI, and it really is amazing. It's like having my own personal stylist for glasses. Using advanced technology to analyze your face and style, Perfect Match AI is going to perfectly match your face and style with frames that fit your look. And I know it sounds easy and too good to be true, and like, oh, it can't be that easy, it can't be that effective, but it works exactly like that. So the Perfect Match AI analyzes unique facial features like your hairline, like your eye height and width, your pupil distance, even your skin tone, your nose bridge, your cheekbones, your jawline. And then you can even try on your curated collection with immersive AR so you can see what these glasses look like on you. The best part is it's completely free and you can do it from anywhere. But what's really cool is that they also offer up to 50% off recommended glasses, plus free shipping and returns. And if you think about it, if you buy on glassesusa.com, you're already getting a discounted rate on these glasses. And if you choose a frame that the Perfect Match AI decided to recommend to you, you're going to get an additional 50% off, which is awesome. So you can get these bad boys on your face with a money back guarantee. So these are the two pairs of glasses I was matched with that I wear all the time because they're perfect for my face and for my lifestyle. So the ones I'm wearing right now are the Ototo Gianni in gold. And of course, I love the way they look with the little cat eye lift at the outer edges. But more importantly, I also love how they feel, how light they are, how they aren't super heavy. They don't leave marks on my nose. They don't make me feel like I'm carrying a small child on my face. The same goes for this pair, which are the Atato Alba, also in gold. And once again, these frames are light but sturdy, and I really, really dig the octagonal geometric look because it's unique and flattering, and it's so easy to shop for and purchase frames on glassesusa.com. It's easy to upload your prescription. You can do it all from the comfort of your own home, and I have never been unhappy with a pair of glasses I've received, and I have plenty of glasses and sunglasses from glassesusa.com. It's the only place I shop for eyeglasses or sunglasses now, and that's because of the ease, the quality, and also the savings. And summer's coming up, so you definitely should check out their whole collection of sunglasses. So if you're loving these glasses or you're ready to find your own perfect match, just click the link in my description box. Glassesusa.com is giving my viewers an extra $10 off on top of any existing coupon or sale. So don't wait, claim your deal now and find your new favorite pair of glasses or sunglasses today. Thank you so much to glassesusa.com for sponsoring today's video, and let's dive in. The way I'm going to be structuring this video is with the assumption that you've already either watched this docuseries or seen my coverage or Crime Weekly's coverage about Gabby Petito, or have seen, a quite extensive footage and coverage about Gabby Petito to begin with, so you know the basics, because we can't really go over the basics again. We've already done that. So many people have done that. But I want to start in 2019, when Gabby and Brian left New York, where they lived, and they moved to Florida to be closer to Brian's sister, Cassie, and her kids. Now, at that time, Brian and Gabby had only been dating for 9 months. And eventually, when they're in Florida, they started living with Brian's parents, Roberta and Christopher Laundrie, who also lived in New York, but then they moved to Northport, Florida, and then Gabby and Brian moved in with them. Now, according to Gabby's parents, at first, the relationship between Gabby and Roberta Laundrie, it seemed good. But then Roberta seemed to switch up. Now, in 2023, Joseph Petito and Nicole Schmidt sued the Laundries. Joseph Petito and Nicole Schmidt are Gabby's parents, and they claimed that Roberta and Christopher had intentionally withheld information about Gabby's death, which obviously caused Gabby's parents pain and emotional distress. Now, there's reasons why Joe and Nicole believed this, and I too believe it, by the way. I believe that Roberta and Christopher Laundrie knew that Gabby was dead before their son returned home to Florida from the cross-country trip that he took with Gabby in the van. And we're going to talk about all of this in a little bit. But in connection with that lawsuit, the Laundries were both deposed on October 11th, 2023. And this deposition, especially Roberta's, is illuminating. So in this deposition, Roberta Laundrie described Gabby as, quote, sweet, cheerful, friendly, warm, affectionate, kind, thoughtful, just a really nice girl, end quote. When asked what Roberta's relationship with Gabby had been like, she answered, quote, very friendly. We'd laugh and joke and talk, and I think we really liked each other, end quote. Roberta said that over time, her relationship with Gabby got closer and that she was never jealous of Gabby's relationship with her son, Brian. Now, in the docuseries, Nicole Schmidt, Gabby's mother, talks about Gabby feeling that Roberta had become jealous of the time that Gabby and Brian were spending together and how close Gabby and Brian were getting. And Nicole describes an incident concerning a pie, this pie incident that went down during dinner one night. And I wish I had known about this pie incident because it tells me so much about Roberta Laundrie, and it tells me so much about the environment that Gabby was living in while she lived with Brian in his parents' house. Now, in the docuseries, the description of this event is pretty vague. But Roberta's going to give us some insight into it during her deposition. So in the docuseries, Nicole Schmidt said that Roberta felt no one was paying enough attention to her pie, right? So she baked a pie for dinner, she put it on the table, and no one fell all over themselves congratulating her for this pie that she had baked. So she got upset, she threw a fit, and I guess gave Gabby and Brian the silent treatment for a while. Or at least she gave Gabby the silent treatment because it seemed that Gabby was the target of Roberta's anger. So during her deposition, Roberta was asked about this pie catastrophe, and she replied, quote, "I didn't remember it until you mentioned it yesterday, and I didn't throw the pie away. It was silly, and my feelings got hurt over a comment on the pie, and I did apologize to Gabrielle because I think my feelings were hurt and I was sulky, but I thought it was all forgotten and we were fine after that. But I was a little sulky that night. And the next day everything was fine and I apologized and she was fine with it and I thought I'd forgotten all about it until it came up yesterday and I felt really bad. But I really thought nothing of it and I thought she thought nothing of it too." End quote. So when asked what exactly the comment was that caused Roberta's feelings to be hurt about this pie, she said, quote, "I don't remember if it was a comment so much. It was, I had made dinner and I had made this pie and I was excited about my pie and to present it on the table. My mother was visiting and I think I was just exhausted from all the people in the house. And when I put the pie down, I think there was a comment. I think there was just a little ruckus at the table where it's so silly, but nobody made a nice comment. I guess it was a lack of a comment. Nobody said, 'Oh, nice pie.' And I know that's so silly and I regret it, but I got annoyed at kind of everybody and a little bit at Gabrielle. And it was silly and I felt bad. I don't even remember it. I vaguely remember it. I just remember it was a pie and I was embarrassed, but I didn't throw out the pie. We ate the pie, but it was just, I don't know. I behaved not nicely and apologized to Gabrielle. She was very nice about it and we were fine after that." End quote. All right, so before I continue on, let me say that Roberta Laundrie, in her deposition, which is obviously the most I've ever heard her talk, which I'm not hearing her talk, but I'm seeing her talk. I'm seeing her cadence, the way she speaks, the mannerisms of her conversation. She talks in circles. And so initially when she's asked about the pie, she's like, "Oh, there was a comment made and that made me mad." So she kind of made it seem as if a rude comment had been made about her pie. And then when she's asked, okay, well, what was that comment exactly? Who made the comment and what was said? And she's like, "Oh, maybe it wasn't a comment so much as that there was no comment. Nobody said nice pie." So everyone's sitting at the dinner table. It's a family dinner. Sounds like Roberta's mother was in town, so Brian's grandmother's there. Brian's family's there. Gabby's there. They're probably all talking, laughing. She said there was a ruckus. They're having a good time. And she puts the pie down. And everybody doesn't just stop their conversation immediately to go, "Oh, whoa, Roberta, this is the best pie in the entire world. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you so much for your sacrifice." And so she got moody about it. And she probably got snappy. And she probably started, passive-aggressively slamming things around and having a face on and kind of just like giving a cold front. And now for the record, I would never hold something like this against someone if it was just one isolated incident, because no one can be perfect. Nobody can hold it together all the time. And sometimes in stressful or overstimulated situations, we all have the capacity to act like petulant children, and then we feel stupid about it, and we have to make amends. However, it did seem like this kind of thing with Roberta was not an isolated incident. It wasn't a one-time occurrence. They showed texts in the docuseries between Brian and Gabby, where Gabby is explaining to Brian how Roberta's mood and emotional state was kind of making her feel awkward and uncomfortable. She texted Brian and said, quote, "Your mom's not in a good mood, so I don't know what's for dinner," end quote. Now Brian answers, and he replied back in my opinion, a very telling way. He said, quote, "A lot of days were like this when I was growing up, and it always just blows over," end quote. Gabby told Brian that she wanted to go grocery shopping, and Brian advised her to, quote, "just say goodbye to her," end quote. As in, yeah, you can go grocery shopping, don't feel awkward. Make sure you say goodbye to my mom before you leave. Don't make her bad mood worse. Gabby wrote back, quote, "I know, I'm just nervous to walk out of the room. I feel like I did something," end quote. Now, the fact that Brian Laundrie acknowledged that his mother would throw fits like this and then hold her family hostage with her negative emotional state often during his childhood, and the fact that Gabby was afraid to even leave her room because Roberta's mood was making her feel anxious, making her feel guilty, as if she'd done something wrong, as if Roberta was mad at her about something, that says a lot to me. It tells me that Roberta was not able to regulate herself emotionally, and as a result, everyone around her had to know that she was in a bad mood, had to, make them feel like they were walking on eggshells, and it most likely dampened their mood as well, because it's honestly, and this is scientifically proven, it's impossible to be around intense negative energy without some of that transferring to you, especially if you're a child, like Brian would have been at one point, and especially if that emotionally unregulated person is your parent, whom you depend on for stability and for care and, attention. Parents who struggle with emotional regulation may react in an overblown way to minor situations, like no one rolling out the damn red carpet for your pie. And this will often lead to arguments and conflicts that escalate quickly and become overwhelming for both the parent and the child. Now, what effect does this have on a child as they grow? So if Roberta Laundrie was like this during Brian's childhood, which he acknowledged that she was, what would that have done to him as he grew into an adult? Well, the child would probably grow to become quite anxious and develop something called hypervigilance, which happens when the natural fight or flight instinct goes into overdrive. Hypervigilance is a protective mechanism where you're constantly scanning the energy and the moods of the people around you in order to pick up on any tonal or behavioral changes in them so you can be prepared for a freakout or a dangerous situation. For instance, a person who lives with an abusive partner or lives in an abusive partner situation may wake up in the morning and pay close attention to the mood and behavior of her abusive partner to see what kind of day she's going to have. Does he seem settled and okay? So as long as I don't do anything to set him off, I might get through this day with no issues. Or does he seem on edge? Does he seem as if he's looking for a fight, which means I need to put my guard up and make sure I'm protecting myself for when the other shoe drops. Take it from me, it is exhausting. It has negative effects on a person mentally, emotionally, and even physically. And if it happens to you as a child at the hands of a parent, you might develop this hypervigilance, which could turn into people-pleasing tendencies in your own personality, which means a life of putting your own needs last and making sure everyone around you is okay before you can feel okay. Now, a grown-ass person like Roberta Laundrie should not be walking around her home punishing everyone for whatever perceived slight they caused her or whatever bad mood she's in, which she'll make them feel responsible for. Not directly, maybe, but in her behavior, in her energy, in her, the way she's doing things. She's walking around stomping, slamming doors. You walk in the room, she won't look at you, or she's making passive-aggressive comments. She's not necessarily looking at Gabby and Brian and saying, oh, you guys suck. I'm mad at you because you didn't say you liked my pie, or I'm mad at you because of this or that. She's just going to tell them through her actions, which is even worse because now as the person on the other end of that, you're constantly trying to figure out, is she mad at me or is she just upset? Did I do something? What did I do? And now you're going over in your head all the things you could have possibly done to have caused this emotional state in someone around you. And to be honest, it is abusive, selfish behavior, and clearly Gabby Petito began to feel very uncomfortable and awkward living in the Laundrie home because of this, and she told her mother that. So Roberta Laundrie was also asked in the deposition about the relationship with her son, Brian. Specifically, she was asked how the relationship was prior to Gabby and Brian being a couple. She said, quote, "Prior to? Wonderful. We were very close. Good relationship." End quote. Roberta said that she and Brian had done everything together. They went to the store together. They went on hikes together. They went on vacation together. They watched TV together. They were besties. When Gabby and Brian decided to take their cross-country van trip, they weren't really upfront about that with Roberta and Christopher Laundrie, which I did not know before reading this deposition, and I didn't know before watching the documentary, and I think that this detail is very interesting. They also were not upfront with them about their engagement. They kind of kept their engagement quiet. Why would they be keeping these important life things quiet? Now, Roberta says in her deposition that they found out less than a week before Gabby and Brian left that Brian and Gabby were going on a trip, and they only figured this out using the method of deduction. And by the way, they only thought that Gabby and Brian were going to New York to, visit Gabby's family. They did not know they were going on like a cross-country trip. They did not know they were going out west. So let's go back for a second, because let's talk about the fact that Roberta and Christopher Laundrie were not told that Gabby and Brian were going anywhere, and they were never told by Gabby and Brian directly. They figured this out by paying attention and kind of, I think, snooping a little bit. So Roberta said that Gabby and Brian had started moving things into a storage unit and they were fixing up the van. And so she and her husband put two and two together. And she said the only reason that she and Christopher found out that there was a storage unit was because, quote unquote, Chris found a receipt. According to Roberta, found a receipt for the storage unit. And only when Brian and Gabby were asked about the receipt and the storage unit did they finally admit that they were putting things into storage. And I think that the plan for the trip was kept from Brian's parents because Brian and Gabby knew how Roberta would react. They knew that she would be upset, that she would guilt trip, that she would try to involve herself in their plans and influence them, or Brian specifically, to do certain things her way instead of allowing them to do it the way they wanted and the way that they had planned together as two adult people in a relationship. Now, Roberta admits that when she found the receipt for the storage unit and she grilled her son Brian about this storage unit, she basically was like, what are you doing this for? Why are you paying for a unit? You're supposed to be saving money. You're supposed to be buying a house. You can just keep your things here. This isn't a good decision, et cetera, right? Involving herself in a simple decision such as getting a storage unit to keep your things so you're not piling them up in your parents' house, which is something that Roberta Laundrie would probably also make Brian feel guilty for. Brian and Gabby feel guilty for, like, oh, well, all your stuff's here. Things like that. So additionally, when Gabby and Brian finally did leave, it does seem like they told the Laundries they were only going to New York for Gabby's brother's graduation. Now, when asked when she finally realized that Gabby and Brian had continued their trip and headed west, this is very important, so pay attention to it, Roberta Laundrie said, quote, when they didn't come back for a while, my daughter had seen a post. I don't know if it was Snapchat. I don't know what the thing they used. And she took a screenshot and sent it to me, and she said, oh, look, they're out west, end quote. Remember, Roberta has said already in this deposition, she did not know that Brian and Gabby were going on this long multi-month, cross-country trip out west until they had not returned for a while. Remember that. The timing is important. When Roberta was asked if she had expressed her thoughts or feelings about the trip to Brian and Gabby, aka involving herself in their plans and giving her unsolicited opinions about it, she replied, quote, I think right before Brian left, I was kind of disappointed because I was like, another trip? I thought, you guys were going to live here and save your money and get a house. But he was like, it's not going to be that much because we're going to stay in the van. And that was my only concern. I thought he wanted to save money for a house. End quote. Now, there was one story that Gabby's mother told that also stuck out to me, and it seemed like, to me, it was Roberta's passive-aggressive way of letting Gabby know that she wasn't wanted there because Roberta wanted her son back and back under her control. And Nicole Schmidt had noticed that Gabby's address had been changed back to New York while Gabby was still living in Florida with Brian and his parents. And I believe this was after Brian and Gabby had left for the trip. Now, Nicole talked to Gabby and asked Gabby why she had changed her address. She's like, hey, are you moving back home to New York? And Gabby replied, quote, I didn't fed my mail, but we haven't heard from Brian's parents. I wonder if his mom changed my mail, end quote. When the text says fed my mail, I wonder if she was trying to say I didn't change my mail or get my mail, but Gabby's basically saying, I did not change my address back to New York. I wonder if Brian's mom did that. Now, like I said, I'm not sure what the timing of this text was, but if it was after Gabby and Brian had left for their trip, it could be a sign that Roberta was upset. Not upset at her sweet little boy, but upset with Gabby for keeping Brian away from his home and his mommy for so long because she wanted to do a van life vlog and she was kind of bringing Brian along with her. Now, in her deposition, after knowing what her son had done to his girlfriend, because remember, Roberta Laundrie's deposed long after Gabby's remains are found, long after Brian's remains are found, long after Brian's weird, fictional version of the events that happened that led to Gabby's death. So she's being deposed and she knows what happened to Gabby and she knows that Brian did it. So after this, she's asked in her deposition to describe Brian. And she said, quote, "He's a very sweet boy, kind, considerate, loving. He loved his nephews. He loved his sister. He loved us. He had a lot of friends that he was friendly with. He was a good boy, hard worker, and I could go on and on and on. He was wonderful." End quote. Now, the fact that Roberta continues referring to Brian as a boy and saying things like, he was a good boy, he was a sweet boy, when in fact Brian was a 23-year-old man who had his own life and was planning his own future, that's also telling to me. I believe that the dynamics between Roberta Laundrie and her son were toxic, and there was probably a good amount of enmeshment going on. A toxic parent has a hard time seeing their child as an adult and continues to treat him like a child, maybe excessively criticizing his choices, like renting a storage unit, maybe trying to control his life, and maybe having difficulty respecting his maturity and independence and boundaries as a grown man. Now, this can happen between mothers and their sons, between mothers and their daughters, I guess even between fathers and their sons, fathers and their daughters. Typically, when you do see it, though, it is a mother-son dynamic. And I think it is especially unhealthy when it happens between a mother and a son. So some of you might not know what enmeshment is, and so I'll do my best to kind of break it down for you really quick. Enmeshment is an unhealthy emotional dynamic where boundaries between a parent and a child are blurred, leading to overdependence, lack of autonomy, and emotional control. The mother might see her son as her emotional partner, sharing intimate details of her life, such as marital issues, finances, or emotional struggles. And the son will eventually feel responsible for his mother's emotions. He'll become a surrogate spouse or even a therapist. The mother relies on her son for emotional support rather than developing healthy adult relationships. She intrudes on her son's personal choices, such as friendships, romance, and career, and she expects to be his top priority. She may discourage independence subtly or overtly. She may make him feel guilty for wanting autonomy, and this can lead to her son feeling an intense sense of duty and guilt towards his mother, even at the cost of his own well-being and personal relationships. The mother may use emotional manipulation, such as guilt trips, playing the victim, or she may use conditional love to keep her son close, and the son may then suppress his own needs to avoid upsetting her. The mother becomes possessive or jealous of his friendships or romantic relationships. She may undermine his partners, creating drama or tension to prevent deep connections with others, and she may subtly reinforce the idea to her son then no one will love him like she does. The son may be held to impossible standards, expected to always be available and loyal, and he may feel like his personal needs and desires don't matter if they conflict with his mother's needs, his mother's desires, and his mother's expectations. And this can deeply impact a child's emotional and psychological development in several ways. It can create low self-esteem, identity confusion. The son may struggle with self-worth because he was raised to meet his mother's needs rather than develop his own sense of self. He may feel anxiety or guilt when asserting independence, like moving out, setting boundaries, or prioritizing himself. And he may struggle with intimacy and trust in relationships because his mother was his primary emotional attachment, and your mother should be your primary emotional attachment in your younger years. But when you get older and your mother doesn't sort of step back and allow you to develop as an adult, and she remains your primary emotional attachment, that's when it becomes problematic. Now, how does all of this apply to what happened to Gabby Petito? And just for the record, I think it goes without saying, I'm not a mental health professional. I don't know Roberta Laundrie. I don't know Brian Laundrie. I haven't talked to them in a therapeutic setting. This is just my belief based on what we do know. And that's it. My own personal opinion allegedly don't come from me. So how would this affect Brian and Gabby? Well, a son who grows up in an enmeshed relationship with his mother can become a toxic partner who unconsciously, and a lot of what we do is unconscious, by the way. A lot of what we do, we're doing without knowing why. We're doing it because of our programming from childhood. So he may unconsciously seek enmeshment in his romantic relationships. So the way he was conditioned and programmed to experience love and attachment as a child can shape how he interacts with his romantic partners in adulthood. He may expect his partner to emotionally care for him the way his mother did. He may seek constant validation, reassurance, and involvement in every aspect of life, and he may become emotionally clingy, feeling anxious if his partner is independent or has interests outside of him and the relationship. Because Brian was used to his mother being deeply involved with every part of his life, he might feel entitled to control his partner Gabby's choices, friendships, or activities. And he might have become jealous or resentful if Gabby wanted to spend time with friends or family instead of prioritizing him, instead of only wanting to be with him. Basically, Brian might have seen Gabby's independence as a threat rather than a healthy part of the relationship. And if his mother used guilt to keep him emotionally tied to her, well, then Brian may have used similar tactics in his own relationships, which we know he did. By the way, we're going to get into that. So this son who grew up in an enmeshed relationship with his mother, he might say things to his partner like, if you really loved me, you wouldn't need to go out with your friends so much. He might make her feel as if she's not giving him enough, even though he gives her everything. Like, I do everything for you. I only want to be with you. Why do you want to be with other people? He might try to make her feel that he feels she doesn't care about him enough. So what's the evidence of this with Brian Laundrie? Now remember, Gabby's friend in Florida, Rose Davis. So both Rose and Gabby were on this app. I think she said it was Bumble, and they were looking for friends, and that was how they met, and they became fast and close friends. They started hanging out a lot. Eventually, Rose said that Brian wanted to meet her because she and Gabby were spending a lot of time together. Now, this in itself is not a red flag because it's normal for someone to want to meet their partner's friends and be a part of their lives. But the way Rose described their first meeting was definitely odd. She said that they all hung out at the beach, and while she and Gabby did their thing and, hung out, Brian sat on a blanket and read a book. And Rose said it felt more like a parent supervising their kids at a playground than a boyfriend who wanted to actively participate in his girlfriend's life, know her friends, right? So Brian says he wants to meet Rose, like, oh, you're spending a lot of time with this person, I want to meet this person. But instead of hanging out with Gabby and Rose and sort of getting to know Rose, kind of seeing what Gabby and Rose's dynamic was, being a part of this situation, he just sat there and monitored it. He just wanted to be there. He didn't care about what they were doing necessarily. He didn't care about who Rose was. He just wanted to be there and kind of supervise Gabby. Rose said, quote, Brian had a very dark side to him. When I was around Gabby and Brian, they seemed like a loving couple. But when Gabby was just with me, he seemed very manipulative, end quote. Now, she gave a specific example of this. So one night, she and Gabby were going out dancing, and Gabby had already left her house, or Brian's parents' house, to meet Rose, but she had to turn around and go back home because she'd forgotten her ID. Now, Rose said that she waited an hour and a half for Gabby to come back. And then she got a text from Gabby apologizing for being so late. And Gabby said that Brian had stolen her ID. The text to Rose said, quote, I'm so sorry I'm running late. Brian stole my ID. I'm sobbing right now, end quote. And this wasn't just an assumption or a theory that Brian had stolen the ID. Brian ended up admitting to Gabby that he had taken her ID because he didn't want her to go out. Huge red flag, huge. So what probably happened is Gabby had left the house thinking her ID was in her purse or wallet, where it always was, where she left it. She realized it wasn't there. She went home to get it, couldn't find it, got in an argument with Brian when he admitted that he had it. So Brian takes Gabby's ID so she can't go out. And this is abusive behavior. This is manipulation. This is control. This is abusive. To try and control your partner or anyone's behavior or activities by withholding things from them. And I've experienced this before, and many of you, I'm sure, have experienced all of the things we're going to talk about today. But for instance, if you have a project to work on and you need your laptop for that, and you're not giving your partner enough attention, and so he steals and hides your laptop so that you can't do your project, which in your head as a normal person, you're like, well, that's not going to make me give you attention because now I'm mad at you because you stole my laptop and this is weird. But in their heads, they are getting attention because you're fighting with them about it, right? You're not working on your project. You are fighting with them about how they stole your laptop so that you couldn't work on your project. Because people like Brian Laundrie, they don't care whether they're getting positive attention or negative attention. They are like children. Emotionally, they are like children. They just care that you're interacting with them. They don't care if you're fighting or if you're happy. They just care that you're interacting with them. So now eventually Gabby and Brian decide to get this van, and they decide to go on a cross-country trip because Gabby wanted to make social media content from it. And in order to do that, they would need money for a van and to do all these modifications to the van. So Gabby started working a lot. She was working at Taco Bell. She was putting in a lot of hours because she wanted to earn the money to get the van and to modify it. And Rose said Gabby was working something like 50 hours a week. And then Rose also said, quote, she would work and then hang out with me. That's when Brian started feeling neglected and having this possessiveness over Gabby, just completely disregarding anything that made Gabby happy, end quote. So Brian even ended up calling Gabby's mother and essentially tattling on Gabby, trying to make it look as if she was going down the wrong path and hanging out with the wrong people, trying to make it look like he was only concerned about Gabby's well-being and that he needed to enlist other people who cared about Gabby to get her back on the straight and narrow, to like do an intervention thing. So Brian texted Gabby's mother, Nicole, and told her that Gabby was hanging out with the wrong people and she was working every night and he was worried about her and, you know, what's going on with Gabby, et cetera, et cetera. In my opinion, this is triangulation. And triangulation is a very toxic form of manipulation that's used to control someone else and dictate their behavior and how they live their life. Triangulation is a manipulative tactic in which one person brings a third party into a conflict or relationship dynamic to control, divide, or influence other individuals. So rather than resolving issues directly, rather than Brian, sitting Gabby down and being like, hey, this isn't working for me. Like, I know you have your own life, but I'm feeling a little lonely, so how can we, find a happy middle ground where we're both satisfied with the relationship? He called her mom, and this is what these manipulators will do. They'll create alliances, they'll fuel tensions, they'll distort reality to maintain power over others. Most mental health professionals agree that an important thing that motivates a person to use such a tactic is insecurity and fear of abandonment. If Brian could convince Gabby's mother of the fake narrative he was painting, he could enlist her as another agent of pressure and control against Gabby. If Gabby didn't want to listen to Brian, maybe she would listen to her mother. And in the end, the result would be the same, right? Brian would get what he wanted. But what people like Brian, who think that they're smarter than everyone else, don't realize is that most people who are close and have healthy relationships don't fall for this shit. And to them, it's very transparent and it's very obvious what the triangulator is trying to do. Obviously, Nicole reached out to her daughter and she was like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Like, what's his deal? And Gabby explained, and then she confronted Brian. Why would you go to my mother and tell her this? Why are you involving her in our personal business? And we have a text from Brian that he sent to Gabby where he says, quote, please, please, please forgive me for calling your mom, but I'm fucked in every aspect of my life now. I just wanted this week to go smoothly. I'm crying so hard in this dumb fucking bathroom typing this, and I know you love me, and I'm so sorry. I worry you'll leave. It's just that I couldn't have my life without you, end quote. Now, this message is not only concerning because nobody should be this dependent on another person where they're like, I'm sobbing in the bathroom. Everything in my life sucks. I can't live without you. That level of intensity, it's not healthy. Okay. Obviously, yeah, I'll be very sad if you leave. If I don't have you, I'll be very sad. It'll take me a long time to recover. It might take me a long time before I can get into another relationship. But like, I can't have a life without you. That's a lot of pressure to put on somebody. So this message is a form of manipulation. He didn't say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that and it won't happen again. He didn't, take accountability. He didn't say, I 100% see why this is wrong and why you're upset. Instead, he makes excuses for why he was so unregulated emotionally that he would do something like that. Like, oh, it's been a stressful week and I really just wanted this week to go well. Like, I needed this week to go well. He also puts guilt on Gabby. I love you so much. I'm just so afraid to lose you. I'm crying right now. I'm vulnerable. I'm sad. I'm not a dangerous or a bad person. I'm just a sad, crying, confused little boy. And because of these strong feelings, I did something out of character. And of course, because Gabby genuinely did love Brian. When you love someone, you don't want to see them upset. You don't want to see them hurt. She responded to him with kindness and understanding. Not only that, she responded in a healthy way with affirmation in an attempt to reassure her partner that she wasn't going anywhere. Gabby wrote back to Brian, quote, no, honey, I didn't want you to be sad today. I love you so much. I'm sorry. I will never leave. 3 exclamation points, end quote. I think a lot of times when men show vulnerability with their partners, the women feel that they shouldn't continue nagging him for what he did wrong because she's proud of him for talking about his feelings and allowing himself to feel his emotions. And she doesn't want to discourage him from doing so in the future because she knows how difficult it is for some men to express themselves and to be vulnerable. And she feels like a sense of pride in her partner, like, this was progress for you. It's a sign of how much you trust me and how much you love me that you feel safe expressing these things to me. And in a healthy relationship, that's 100% true. That's 100% true. Your male partner should feel comfortable being vulnerable with you and showing emotion that he doesn't necessarily want to show to the rest of the world, but not when it's used to manipulate. So Brian replied to Gabby after her nice message. He said, quote, "I am crying right now, but it's okay. I was just saying how it's so crazy. I was alone for so long and was so unhappy, but now that I love you so much, every second alone, I'm just stuck with a person I hate." End quote. Let's unpack this because this manipulation continues and gets even more intense in this message. Once again, Brian lets Gabby know that he's crying. And somehow that's her fault, or at least her responsibility, because he's not an adult who's responsible for managing his own emotions. He then creates some more victimhood for himself. I've been alone for so long. I never let anyone in. I never let anyone close. But then you came along, and with your special key that only you hold, you unlocked my cold, shut-off heart, and now every second I'm alone, I'm with someone I hate. He's speaking about himself there, the person he hates. That's him. Big red flag. If you cannot love and accept yourself, you certainly cannot love and accept another. Brian did not love Gabby. He loved the way she made him feel. He loved the person he became when she was with him. He loved the way others saw him because she was at his side. But he didn't truly love her, because if he did, he wouldn't be doing any of this shit. None of it. So Rose said that because Gabby loved Brian so much, she took the blame, and she felt bad that she was making him cry, because if he was crying, that meant that she had hurt him, and she loved him, and so she was beating herself up for hurting someone that she loved, because, she's healthy. But listen, at first, Gabby's gonna continue reassuring Brian, and she's gonna be like, "No, baby, it's fine. I love you. Like, I'm not going anywhere." She thinks it's just normal, anxiety. People get it. You have, fear of abandonment. You care about somebody so deeply. You do fear losing them. But once you get reassurance from your partner, and once they've shown you with their words and with their actions that it's you and them, you're in this together, usually that's going to stop. But it didn't stop with Brian, right? He kept moving the goalpost. He needed constant reassurance from her. He couldn't trust her words. And she eventually saw that he was moving the goalpost and that, it was never enough for him. And she stopped. She stopped feeling so guilty because in the beginning, when he's doing this, Rose said Gabby felt guilty. Well, that's exactly what Brian wanted her to feel, right? When a person intentionally tries to make someone else feel guilty, remorseful, or bad about their decisions or choices, it is in an effort to get someone to change how they think, feel, or act. According to Psychology Today, quote, "Guilt tripping is a form of emotional blackmail whereby the guilt tripper feels entitled and innocent of any misdeed." End quote. Guilt is often used by manipulative people, such as covert narcissists, to get others to do what they want, to get others to feel their pain. So in the future, when Gabby would think about doing the same thing that had caused this pain in Brian, that had caused him to cry in a bathroom, she would think twice, because that action and his hurt would be now inextricably linked, right? In her brain, she's being programmed by Brian the way he was programmed by his mother. But here's the thing. Consistent guilt tripping, constantly putting your emotions at the feet of someone else and claiming they are responsible. This often does backfire for the manipulative party. Although it may seem effective in the short term, and it is effective in the short term, as we saw with Gabby, the person being guilt-tripped is eventually going to realize that no matter how much they change their behavior, no matter how perfect they try to be, their partner is always going to find fault with them in order to keep them in this submissive role, in order to keep them constantly off balance. The toxic person is going to move the goalpost so often, and the person who is the victim of this will eventually feel emotionally exhausted by it. And they're going to feel resentful about it. And they're going to start pulling away mentally and emotionally in order to protect themselves. According to Rose Davis, even before Gabby and Brian left for their van life trip, Gabby sensed something was wrong and that Brian maybe wasn't being so nice or fair to her. And we see a note from Gabby to Brian that she wrote before they left, and it says, quote, "Brian, you know how much I love you. Just please stop crying and calling me names. You in pain is killing me," end quote. Now, Gabby shouldn't have said that, and I know. She thought she was dealing with a normal relationship, a normal partner, where you would tell your partner, hey, this is hurting me. This is killing me. And they'd be like, oh, I need to stop doing that because I don't want to hurt my partner. I don't want my partner in pain because of me. That's how Gabby was feeling, right? So she was projecting her own sort of the way she would handle a situation where she felt she was hurting her partner. She was projecting that into Brian, thinking that he would feel the same back reciprocally, but he didn't. When you tell a manipulative person like this, a toxic person like this, that something they're doing is hurting you, that you being in pain is killing them, they're going to do it more, right? And it's to punish you for, having the audacity to even be your own person. And it's also to keep you once again in a negative state, to keep you off balance, not knowing what to expect from day to day. And in another text to Brian, Gabby wrote, quote, "Don't try to control me because it only makes me mad. I love you, but it's the way you speak to me that hurts me the most," end quote. So we can see that as time went on, Gabby was like, all right, what can I do here, man? I've bent over backwards. I've reassured you. I sacrifice for you. I don't do things I want to do because I know it upsets you. What else can I do? How much can I let myself and my goals and my needs slip away at the cost of what you want, right? Which is maybe, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, in my opinion, maybe that's what Brian was feeling, right? As he grew up with Roberta as a mother. And maybe when he met Gabby, Brian was kind of like, all right, I have someone else I can sort of like attach myself to. And so I don't need my mom as much. And I'm actually kind of resentful to her for the environment that I had to grow up in. That could have been what was happening there. And Roberta was sensing that, which was causing Roberta to freak out and pull Brian closer, the way that Gabby sort of fading away and kind of detaching herself from Brian was making Brian freak out and try to pull her closer. But Brian and Roberta Laundrie don't know how to, have real intimate bonds and connections with people. So instead of just having a talk and having honesty and communication, they use manipulation and other guilt tactics and other control tactics. At the end of the day, Brian, in my opinion, could not wait to get Gabby in that van and drive away because it would mean months on the road with just the two of them. It would mean no more long work shifts, no more play dates with Rose, no other people around to distract Gabby, to take her attention away from Brian, and no one there to reason with her about how her boyfriend's controlling and jealous tendencies were probably not the sign of a healthy or normal relationship. And according to Rose and others, Brian wasn't really interested in Gabby's idea to vlog their van life trip. He thought the whole idea was stupid. Why did he think it was stupid? Well, because it was Gabby's idea. She was passionate about it. She devoted a lot of time and energy to it. And because he needed to make Gabby feel like everything she came up with on her own was dumb, so that she depended and relied on him for more and more of her identity, he basically told her, like, oh, this idea is stupid, right? So if he wasn't driving the idea, or if he wasn't an active and equal part in the idea, he didn't want Gabby to do it. Brian wanted Gabby's identity firmly interwoven with his. It would just be another tie that bound her to him and made it harder for her to leave him. If Gabby's questioning her own worth, her own confidence, if she's like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be a content creator and I'm going to do this van life thing and it's going to blow up, because at that time van life content was doing well on YouTube and social media. And Brian was like, I don't think you're going to pull this off. Like, it's 1 in a million. Like, these people got famous because they hit the algorithm right. Like, that's not going to be you. If he's making her question herself to the point where she's just like, well, I just won't do it then. Like, I give up. Like, what do you want to do, Brian? That's what he was hoping for. That's what would make it harder for Gabby to leave Brian, when she suddenly had her entire identity depended on him, and so that she wouldn't know who she was when they weren't together. That's what he wanted. Rose Davis said that she believed a big reason Brian didn't want Gabby to do the vlog was because he was worried that the truth of everything would be on that footage. And there is that possibility that he says the wrong thing or reacts the wrong way while she's filming and recording. Behind the scenes, we know that Gabby and Brian would get into arguments. That's what Rose said. And I'm sure that's true because in a lot of these van life videos, the raw footage that we see in the docuseries, it seems that Brian and Gabby are often annoyed with each other, and he's unhappy when she turns the camera on and starts filming for the vlog. But in my opinion, I think there was another reason why Brian didn't want Gabby to be so focused on the vlog, and that was because it took her attention away from him. She took it very seriously. She wanted it to be her career, and she would spend a lot of time making sure she got the right shot or editing her footage. And during those times when she was engrossed with her work, Gabby wasn't able to be in the moment with Brian. Now, there's one clip from the raw footage where Brian's driving, he's in the driver's seat, Gabby's in the passenger seat, she's typing on her laptop. Brian points to something outside the van window, and he's like, "Hey, did you see that?" Gabby glances up. She gives sort of a vague acknowledgement. She looks back down at her laptop, and Brian looks absolutely devastated and like mad about it. You know, I understand that what he was doing was a bid for attention, and that's normal. That's normal. And it's also normal to feel a little hurt, you know, when you try to point something out to your partner and they're distracted or whatever. But then there's a part of you as an adult who you have to like level with yourself, right? You feel the hurt, that's fine. And then you tell yourself like, all right, well, you know, to be fair, Gabby's clearly hyper-focused on what she was doing, right? She's clearly doing some work. She probably communicated that to him, and she did glance up and she did give, you know, some acknowledgement. It just wasn't like this big reaction that I believe he was looking for. It did not match his energy. And like I said, while I understand it may have been hurtful for Brian's bid for attention and connection to be sort of dismissed, we have to understand the reality of the situation. Gabby and Brian were together 99% of the time, alone together 24/7, kind of like 100% of the time, so like 99.9% of the time. He probably even went to the bathroom with her. And everyone has different levels of needing alone time or needing time to focus on personal pursuits or just like mentally unwind. It seemed like Brian needed a lot of attention, and it seemed like he wanted all of Gabby's attention. She was not an autonomous being to him. She was an NPC who was there to tell him he was handsome and to react excitedly to every little thing he wanted to point out or engage in. She was there to make him feel good about himself. He didn't care what she wanted to do. And we know that Brian Laundrie was this pompous, I'm not like every girl kind of person who would often post on social media about how society was spiraling and how it was more important to be immersed in nature than staring at a screen. And I don't even disagree with that sentiment, but he took it to a whole different level, okay? He was just so condescending and like he had this whole like, I'm better than everybody kind of demeanor about him. And clearly, Gabby's own belief system didn't necessarily completely line up with Brian's because she was more active on social media. She wanted to become an influencer. So she's not going to be like, screw this phone, I'm throwing it out the window. Let's just walk in the grass barefoot together and you know, dance in daisy fields. She wanted to make her life and her career on social media. Now, a couple doesn't have to believe in the exact same things or live the exact same life. They just have to be understanding of each other's differences. They have to find a middle ground. They have to find something that works for them. But Brian judged others who were not like him, who did not hold the same morals and values as he did. And to him, Gabby kind of was the same as him at first, which she probably did mirror him a little bit early on. And he's like, I like being in nature. She's like, me too. And he's like, I think that, you know, cell phones are destroying society. And she's like, I feel that way too. But she just didn't feel it like as seriously and intensely as he did. So when she started to be more comfortable to be herself, and then she's focused on like this vlog, which has to do with social media and screens and electronics and stuff, she started to show that she was different. And to Brian, Gabby having a different set of views, it was a personal insult to him. It was an assault on their relationship, and he felt betrayed. So Dr. John Gottman, if you don't know about John Gottman and his love lab, he's an amazing pioneer, honestly, in the field of attachment and love and marriage. And he did a study on divorce prediction in 1976. And he's now known as the guy who can predict divorce with over 90% accuracy. And basically, I'll give you a quick overview. He had like a lab, and he would put couples in this lab, and it was kind of just like a normal hotel room looking thing. And then he would have these couples talk to each other, but there'd be cameras on them. the cameras would be watching their faces so that they could see their expressions, their micro expressions, obviously recording what they said, things like that. And from these studies, John Gottman identified like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse of a marriage, right?
Along with what Dr. Gottman terms the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. That includes criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling, are all measured and later analyzed to predict the relationship stability. Afterwards, tapes are archived. Thousands of tapes record decades of studies on couples. Each tape tells a remarkable story. Once Dr. Gottman analyzes the data on a couple, he meets with them in his office to talk over the findings. Dr. Gottman remains an optimist about making marriages work.
So there's a lot of different things that you can tell in people when they're like on the verge of a divorce, and you can kind of tell, he could tell, Dr. John Gottman could tell, like, okay, these people are not going to make it. And Gottman found that the number 1 predictor of divorce is contempt. Gottman says, quote, "It conveys, I'm better than you. I don't respect you. It's so destructive, in fact, that couples who are contemptuous of each other are more likely to suffer from infectious illness than couples who are not contemptuous of each other. The target of the contempt is made to feel despised and worthless. Treating others with disrespect and mocking them with sarcasm are forms of contempt. So are hostile humor, name-calling, mimicking, and or body language such as eye-rolling and sneering." End quote. And during Gabby's raw footage, I saw plenty of eye-rolling from Brian Laundrie. There was a ton of contempt from Brian towards Gabby. There's a ton of contempt from Brian towards everybody. But the contempt towards Gabby, it wasn't because of who she was, but because she wasn't who he thought she was, who he wanted her to be, who he had convinced himself in his own mind that she was, the person she, he thought she was, that he had put her on a pedestal. People like Brian will often create a projection of their partner in their heads. They'll create this fake image of a real person, and that fake image rarely holds many similarities with who that person actually is. I believe that Brian put Gabby on a pedestal. He thought this pretty, young, energetic girl was going to come into his life, fix all his problems, his depression would go away, he would have someone who wanted to do all the same things he did, who felt the same way about the things that he felt, and then as some time passed, he realized that she was her own person with her own feelings and flaws. Now, usually when you love someone, you love them for everything. And as you get to know them more and you do see their flaws and you do see their little idiosyncrasies, it's kind of endearing, right? You're like, I love you more because of these. These are the things that make you unique. These are the things that make you you. When Gabby did not live up to Brian's impossibly high standards of perfection and wholeness that he had placed on her, he once again saw it as a direct attack on him. And he was angry that she wasn't acting in alignment with the person that he had created in his head. Gabby, on the other hand, she was not made privy to what she looked like in Brian's head. She had not been made aware of this glowing avatar of a woman that Brian had made her out to be. And so she was just acting like herself, like a human who has flaws and bad days, like you should be able to do with your intimate partner, right? She thought she was in a relationship dynamic of acceptance because that's what she gave to Brian with his freaking anxiety all the time, and he needs constant reassurance, and he's crying in the bathroom. She's constantly having to cater to him and his idiosyncrasies, which she did because she loved him. But he was not doing that for her. And she had no idea that Brian's contempt for her was rising by the day. I think that Brian finding out who Gabby really was as they spent more alone time together and him ending up feeling like she was just like everyone else, him feeling almost betrayed by the fact that she had the audacity to not be this perfect woman he had created, I believe it contributed to Gabby's death. But I think something else also played a factor. And to talk about that, we have to quickly go over a timeline. So, we know that on August 12th in Moab, Utah, Gabby and Brian got into a physical altercation that was witnessed by more than one person, and someone called it into the police. This resulted in the body cam footage that we've all seen where Gabby is a crying mess, taking all the blame for what happened, attributing it to her anxiety and her issues, and Brian is cool as a cucumber while talking to the police. Now remember, the person who called the police said they saw the male slapping the female.
Well, I was just really stressed this morning trying to get a lot of work done, and I was apologizing to him on I had thrown a bunch of stuff in the bag, and all our bags are back there. I was just apologizing. I was like, I'm sorry that I get so stressed out because I have OCD and I was just like organizing stuff, and sometimes I just have a mean attitude, but I'm not trying to be mean about straightening things up and stuff. So I was just apologizing, but I guess I said it in like a mean tone, and he got really frustrated with me, and he locked me out of the car and told me to go take a breather, but I didn't want to take a breather because I wanted to get going. We're out of water.
So it kind of made you more upset.
Yeah,
It didn't help calm you. It made you more upset. Happened after he locked you out until you take a breather.
well, he walked away to go take his own breather, but I wanted to sit in the car because all my stuff was in the car. I had none of my bags, and I was working on something at the moment in the car, and he told me to just relax for a second, and I didn't want to relax, so I got really mad. And, I mean, I don't need to be mad.
Yeah, that happens. Then what happened? After you
And,
got
and,
mad?
and I told him to drive and get water for thirsty.
Yeah. Was there something on your cheek here? Looks like did you get hit in the face? Kind of looks like something like hit you in the face.
I don't
And then over on your arm,
know.
shoulder, right here. That's new, huh? It's kind of a new mark.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Did I see the other side of your face? So, what happened here and here?
I'm not sure. It was a. Yes, I was just trying to get in the back of the car, and he's acting like the back. Yeah.
So the backpack got you? So there's two people that came to us and told us that they saw him hit you. There's two people saying that they saw him punch you. We're just independent witnesses by Moonflower.
Well, to be honest, I definitely hit him first.
So Gabby behaved in a way Brian didn't like during a conversation they were having, and so he locked her out of the van while she was doing something in order to remove her autonomy, to withhold something that was important to her, and to punish her for her impudence. And Gabby doesn't see that this is abusive because she's so deep in the manipulation cycle that she's blaming herself, and she doesn't even feel comfortable admitting that it was Brian who left those marks on her body. She says she hit him first. She's justifying his actions against her because of what she did to him, which in my opinion was reactive abuse because he removed her control over her own situation and over her own life by locking her out of the van in a strange place where she did not live, where she did not know anybody, where everything she owned was, including her computer and her phone, the keys, and honestly, whatever she was working on at the time, right? That was a very important thing to her, to get her vlog done. So he takes away everything that gives her control over her situation. And Gabby continues to blame herself. And it's interesting because she talks about all this anxiety that she has, but it is my belief that before Brian, Gabby wasn't this anxious basket case that she's going to portray herself to be to the police. I'm sure she had some, low-level anxiety here and there. We all do. But I believe that the relationship with Brian, trying to be sane in an absolutely insane environment, is what caused Gabby's initial intense anxiety. And then Brian used this, something he had created in her, to continue making her feel like something was wrong with her. And that every situation she reacted poorly in wasn't because of what he was doing, but because of this defect in her. Like, oh, it's just your anxiety. It's just your anxiety. Like, that's not what I actually said, or it's not that serious, or that's not what actually is happening here. It's just your anxiety, things like that.
Do you have medication for anxiety you take or anything?
No.
Do you take any medication for any,
I just do yoga and
try to meditate and stuff? But you tend to have a lot of anxiety and stress?
a lot of anxiety.
And what's his name? Is it Brian? Is he usually pretty patient with you?
Yeah, but it just makes me upset. I know that he got is frustrated with me a lot because I have a lot of anxiety, and he definitely has anxiety too.
Well, that could be a bad combo if you both have anxiety. I have anxiety too, and my girlfriend's really, really calm, and she has a way of taking my anxiety and bringing it down. But my ex-wife, that's why she's my ex-wife. I'm just sharing. I know it's a little personal, but to help you understand, we would feed off each other's anxiety and it would spiral. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter how much I loved her. It may be bad for your soul. Just saying. And I'm not telling you what to do with your life, but if you know you have anxiety, look at the situations you can get in. You know what I mean?
And I know that the Moab police have gotten a lot of flack for the way they handled this situation, rightly so in my opinion, but this guy here who's talking to Gabby, he's absolutely right. If you see that your partner's in a tense mood, is overstimulated or experiencing anxiety, the loving thing to do would be to try and calm them and try to bring your own feelings and emotions down so as not to escalate the situation. You wouldn't lock them out of their van and expect this to calm their already intense and present anxiety. And while Gabby's trying to protect Brian and not make him look bad, Brian's over there talking mad shit, trying to make Gabby look like a crazy person to the cops. Now, we know that after this argument, Gabby and Brian were separated for the night. Did you know that they actually sent Brian to a hotel that was for domestic abuse victims? Yeah, that's ridiculous. And then after they were separated, they continued on with their trip. Now, on August 17th, Brian flew out of Salt Lake City to Tampa, Florida, and he did this to allegedly close out his storage unit, and this left Gabby alone with the van for a few days. Now, we know that on August 21st, Gabby was at a hotel in Salt Lake City because this was the last time she spoke to her father, Joe Petito, when he ordered her some Uber Eats, and she would be at this hotel until August 24th. On August 22nd, Gabby reached out to someone from her past, an ex-boyfriend named Jackson. She told him that she was only going to be alone for one more night. So she basically hit him up. She's like, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I like to talk to you. I'm only going to be alone for one more night. And she says this because she knows Brian is returning from Florida the following day. And she knows that she can't talk to her friends or her ex-boyfriend while Brian's around because he's probably thrown fits about this before. Gabby told Jackson, quote, I have a plan. I think I want to leave him. I'm going to do it. I have to figure out what to do. End quote. Now, I believe this was said during a phone call, but a few days later on August 27th, Gabby texted Jackson again, I think over Snapchat. She said she was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and the name of the town reminded her of him. Now, I'm not sure what else was said or if there was a ton of back and forth messages, but later that day, Jackson got a call from Gabby, which he missed. Now, August 27th also happened to be the same day that Gabby was last seen alive at a Whole Foods in Jackson Hole. I believe August 27th is the day that Brian killed Gabby, because 4 hours after Gabby and Brian were seen at Whole Foods, travel bloggers Red, White, and Bethune drove past Gabby's van, which was abandoned at the side of a road, which was winding through Grand Teton National Park. Gabby's remains will be found in the Spread Creek area of Wyoming's Bridger Teton National Park, which is on the western edge of Grand Teton. Now, based on cell phone records, we know that Brian left the Spread Creek area on August 28th. And then he hiked up to the Coulter Bay Village area, which is about 26 miles from Spread Creek. And he did this to create an alibi. As he walked to Coulter Bay, Brian took pictures of different things, including many pictures of dead animal skulls, which is weird. On August 29th, Brian had a 55-minute phone call with his mother, Roberta Laundrie. During this call, he also spoke to his father, Christopher. Right after this call, Christopher Laundrie contacted the family attorney, who we have all come to know and not love, Stephen Bertolino. Obviously, no one knows what took place during that phone call besides Brian, who is gone, and his parents, who, well, you know, they're never gonna be honest about what happened. But it seems fairly obvious that Brian told them something happened to Gabby. The question is, did he confess to being the one who had done something to her? According to Roberta and Christopher Laundrie, he did not. Which is ludicrous, okay? Like, I can't stand the absolute audacity of these people to just feed us nonsense. In my opinion, this is just my opinion. I have no evidence of this, but I have some supporting evidence. I have some evidence that I believe supports the fact that Brian absolutely told them what happened in that phone call. But anyways, in his deposition, Brian's father, Christopher Laundrie, claimed that Brian repeatedly told him that Gabby was gone. Chris said that Brian was frantic, very excited. Brian also asked his father for help and said that he might need a lawyer. But when Christopher asked why Brian would need an attorney, Brian wouldn't tell him. According to Christopher, he never thought that Brian had killed Gabby. He had no idea what to think. Now, I call bullshit on this because the Laundries are grown-ass adults with brains in their heads. And if your son called you absolutely frantic, saying his girlfriend was gone repeatedly, and then also saying that he needed a lawyer, 1 + 1 = 2 every single time. Now, Roberta Laundrie said something a bit different during her deposition, which I find interesting. She claimed that although Brian told his father that Gabby was gone, he had not said those words to her. Roberta said that her husband must have told her what Brian said to him after they hung up about Gabby being gone. And when asked during her deposition what she felt Brian meant when he said Gabby was gone, she replied, quote, "I wasn't sure. I don't even remember what I thought. I just know from the tone of Chris's voice it was something serious." End quote. She was pressed on this during the deposition, as she should have been, and the lawyers questioning her were like, wait, Brian told you Gabby was gone? He told you to call a lawyer? Well, if you weren't sure what gone meant when he said she was gone and you didn't know what gone meant, why would you call a lawyer? Why would you do that? Like, what are you talking about? Why would he need a lawyer if he hadn't done anything to Gabby? So Roberta's questioned, and the lawyers ask her if she asked Brian what was wrong, because his voice sounded upset. She said he didn't sound like himself. He was clearly upset. He was very upset, and she knew something was wrong. And so the lawyers are like, well, did you ask him what was wrong? And she said, quote, "Well, it was as we were saying goodbye, and I didn't want to push him, and I just thought, well, maybe he's just sad to say goodbye. It wasn't until I got off that I thought, no, he sounded more than just sad." End quote. So they ask her, did you have a good relationship with your son? She's like, yeah. And they're like, and you knew he was upset? And she's like, yeah. And they ask her, well, you just said goodbye and you didn't, ask him what was wrong and why he was continuing to be upset. And she continues and says again, quote, "Yeah, I just thought he was sad to say goodbye, and I didn't like to. I figured if he has anything he wants to talk about, he could talk about it. I don't like to push people to say what's wrong. We were saying goodbye, and it was just at the tail end of the conversation." End quote. She doesn't like to push people. Yes, she does, in my opinion. Allegedly, don't come for me. So the lawyers are like, well, Chris, your husband, told you that Brian told him Gabby was gone. And Chris, your husband, also told you that Brian told him to call a lawyer, right? And she's like, yes, to all of that. That's correct. And the lawyers say to Roberta Laundrie, quote, "Okay, so if Gabby's gone, please call a lawyer. Doesn't that say to you that she's dead?" End quote. And Roberta Laundrie responds back, quote, "I didn't know what to think. I don't remember if that crossed my mind or if I was just so nervous. I just thought he was in some kind of trouble. I didn't know." End quote. The lawyers question her. They say, quote, "What other possible explanation could there be? She's gone. Please call a lawyer." End quote. She said, quote, "A lot of things ran through my head. Possibly they got in a fight and, maybe she's going to press charges against him or something. I didn't know." End quote. So you thought they got in a fight and she was going to press charges against him? Well, what could she press charges against him for other than, physical assault, which means that you thought it was possible your son Brian physically assaulted his girlfriend Gabby. You thought that was possible. Okay, interesting. So the lawyers push her again. They say, quote, "Your son's upset. He says Gabby's gone. Your husband says call a lawyer. You call a lawyer. And you never call your son back immediately and say what's going on, what's happening." End quote. Roberta says, quote, "I think I spoke to him finally later in the day. I thought I called him back that night. But it was 2 years ago and I don't remember exactly, but I thought I did call him back later that night. But by that point, I think our attorney had just said, don't talk to him about anything. He'll talk to Brian." End quote. Now, it's interesting because when Chris Laundrie was asked, did he think at the time when this phone call happened that Gabby was dead, he said no. And he said he didn't think that Brian had killed Gabby or done something to her. But when Roberta is asked a similar question, she answers differently. So the lawyers say, quote, "But the fact that maybe he murdered her went through your mind, didn't it?" End quote. She says, quote, "I don't know if I even wanted to. I think I was so panicky, it might have gone through my mind. I can't recall what I was thinking at the time." End quote. And they kind of keep pushing her again. And they're like, listen, it's something as significant as your son potentially murdering his girlfriend. You can't remember if you thought that or not. She keeps getting pushed to give a better, more accurate, response. And at some point, they do ask her in this deposition, like, do you suffer from memory issues? Because Roberta Laundrie can remember nothing, okay? And so she answers again. And she says, quote, "I don't remember all the thoughts I thought. I was panicking and thinking a lot of thoughts, and it's hard to think back to a time with new information what you thought at the time, but it probably went through my mind." End quote. Now, we know from Brian's confession letter, which, in my opinion, that I feel this way. I think it's a completely fabricated story that he or maybe even someone else came up with to kind of make sure that even in death, he didn't have any responsibility for his actions. But we know from his letter that he left behind Gabby fell in a creek and hit her head or something, and she was so injured that she begged Brian to put her out of her misery, and so he strangled her to death. In this note, he said, quote, "I have ended my life not because of a fear of punishment, but rather because I can't stand to live another day without her." End quote. Bullshit. Bullshit. You killed her before you left the Spread Creek area, before you went hiking, and continued texting her phone as if she was still alive to create an alibi. You killed her before you called your parents, said Gabby's gone, and asked for a lawyer. If you took your own life because you couldn't fathom living another day without her, if you weren't afraid of the repercussions for your actions, then why did you go to such lengths to try to convince everyone that Gabby was still alive when you weren't there? Why would you need a lawyer? Why would you hike from Spread Creek to Coulter Bay, taking pictures of the scenery and of animal skulls, and then hitchhike back to Spread Creek, telling everyone who you got in the car with that you were making your way back to your fiancé, your alive fiancé? Now, here are some of Brian's texts to Gabby as he was putting distance between himself and the crime scene where her body was left. He said, quote, "I'm surprised you're even getting my texts. And do you think you could pick me up tomorrow instead of Monday? I don't think I could do 2 more nights," end quote. So Brian's trying to make this whole story up that he left Gabby to work on her vlog and he just went hiking, a little solo hiking trip by himself. But, he's like, ugh, wilderness out here sucks. Can you pick me up tomorrow? Bring me back to our campsite. Now, all of these texts that Brian were sending to Gabby's phone, which was still back at the van in Spread Creek, they were not opened by Gabby's phone until Brian's phone was also back in the Spread Creek area on the evening of August 29th. And then, when Brian and Gabby's phones were in the exact same location, Gabby's phone suddenly opened those texts and responded to them, saying, quote, "Yeah, sure, baby. We'll do 2 more nights of Dispersed, and then we've got our site at Coulter Bay for 2 nights, end quote. So not only was Brian sending himself texts from Gabby's phone, pretending to be her, but as we know, he was texting her family, pretending to be Gabby. Brian then left Wyoming with the van on August 30th, headed back to Florida, and along the way, he used Gabby's debit card to get gas because he's a piece of shit. Now, this is simply my opinion based on the evidence we do have and based on what I know of human nature. But I believe that Brian's parents knew very well that Gabby was dead, and I think if Brian didn't outright tell them that he had done it, they heavily suspected it, or they should have. Roberta Laundrie was asked if she was worried about Gabby, since Brian was driving back home to Florida, with Gabby's van, and he would return home with all of Gabby's belongings, including her laptop, which she had been using to edit her van life vlog. So what did she think? That he just left Gabby out west? No van, no laptop, none of her clothes, belongings, nothing? And that was fine? Right? So Roberta was asked during the deposition, quote, "So when you learned your son was on the way back, you didn't say to him, 'Wait a minute, what about Gabby? You have all her belongings in the van. You can't just leave her there,' end quote." Roberta replied, quote, "Oh, I just figured, it was his van, and I know when my daughter broke up with her boyfriend, they divided belongings later," end quote. Roberta's asked if she was concerned about Gabby at all, concerned about where Gabby might be or what had happened to her, this sweet girl who Roberta had said she loved and who had lived with her for a time. Roberta was asked, "Did you have Gabby's number?" And Roberta said, yes, she did. And then she was asked if she tried to call Gabby, and Roberta said, no, she didn't. Roberta Laundrie made no attempt to contact Gabby at all, not to make sure she was okay, to make sure she was in a safe place. And I believe that this is because she knew that Gabby was dead. So I have a son, and if my son and his girlfriend got into a fight, even if I wasn't a big fan of the girl, and then my son, came back with all her shit and her van, I would probably call her. I'd call her. Even after Brian, or my son, Brian's not my son, thank God, but even if my son called me and was like, "We got in a fight, I'm coming back, I'm leaving her here," I would have called her that same day and been like, "Hey, honey, I know breakups are hard. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Do you want me to call your parents? Do you have money?" I'd be worried about her as a human being. Okay? And then when Brian got home to Florida, Roberta claims she did not question him about what had happened or where Gabby was because the lawyer had advised them to not talk about it. And it's just come on, man. Do you expect us to believe that? Brian came home after all this drama, after calling you in a distressed state, repeatedly saying Gabby was gone, requesting his parents contact a lawyer, and you were able to hold yourself back from asking any clarifying questions at all? Knowing how hands-on Roberta was with her son and in his life, I have a hard time believing that. She couldn't even let the man rent a storage unit without questioning about it, telling him he was an idiot for wasting money. And then, when Roberta and Christopher are getting messages from Gabby's family, from her parents, saying, "We haven't spoken to our daughter in days. We don't know where she is. We haven't heard from her in 7 days, 8 days, 9 days, 10 days, 11 days. and they're not responding to the messages. And then when Gabby's officially reported missing and the world was looking for her, you still didn't ask him any questions? Bitch, please. And we know from the deposition, that's what she said. They were like, well, when Nicole and Joe were like texting you and asking where Gabby was or if you'd heard from her, did you not ask Brian questions then? She's like, no. And they're like, well, when there was like a manhunt for Gabby, did you ask Brian questions then? She's like, no, the lawyer told me not to. Okay, dude. Okay. Stop it. Stop it. Obviously, the lawyer doesn't want Brian to talk about things to like the police or the media or to anybody that would possibly incriminate him. But I don't think that the lawyer is going to tell Brian, like, don't even talk to your own parents about this. Stop it. I mean, maybe, and this is just speculation, maybe if Brian had told Stephen Bertolino that he'd killed Gabby, maybe then Stephen Bertolino would have been like, don't tell anybody. Don't talk, not even your parents. But then as Roberta and Christopher Laundrie, wouldn't you have been like, why does the lawyer not want him to tell us anything? You know, this isn't just some like, oh, they had a squabble or like some domestic dispute. Why does the lawyer not want him to talk to us about this when we're paying for the lawyer, right? I don't buy it. I don't buy it. We also learned that on August 29th, the same day Brian called and said Gabby was gone and the Laundries called a lawyer, Roberta sent Brian an email about using Gabby's Tide stick to get a stain out of a t-shirt. Now, Roberta was asked during the deposition why she would send that email, and she replied, quote, because she was so funny with her Tide sticks. It was a joke because she just loved. If you had a stain, she'd whip out a Tide stick, and she gave everybody a Tide stick. And so that was my little joke, and it was funny. My husband stained his t-shirt, and that was my little joke. We should try one of Gab's Tide sticks. She loved her Tide sticks. I think she bought them in cases and gave them out to people, end quote. Roberta was asked to recall a previous statement where she had claimed she rarely emailed Brian, so why would she email him on this day about a stain on a shirt and getting a stain out of a shirt? And Roberta said, quote, I know. It's such a coincidence. I don't know. I guess I was looking for t-shirts for my husband. And as a matter of fact, I don't remember this email, but recently when the FBI released to you all our emails, this one came up and I thought, oh, I forgot all about that one. And I didn't see that email, end quote. What? That's not an answer. That's not an answer, Roberta. What the hell did you just say? She talks in circles. She was then asked if she was telling Brian how to get blood out of a shirt, and she said no. She said it was just a coincidence that she sent that email on that day that he told them Gabby was gone. Now, this is going to bring us to the burn after reading letter that was found in Brian Laundrie's backpack near his remains. Now, this letter, we call it the burn after reading letter because that's what Roberta wrote on it. She said burn after reading. The letter was written by Roberta and addressed to her son Brian, and it read, quote, I just want you to remember, I will always love you, and I know you will always love me. You are my boy. Nothing can make me stop loving you. Nothing will or could ever divide us, no matter what we do or where we go or what we say. We will always love each other. If you're in jail, I will bake a cake with a file in it. If you need to dispose of a body, I will show up with a shovel and garbage bags. If you fly to the moon, I will be watching the skies for your re-entry. If you say you hate my guts, I'll get new guts. Remember that love is a verb, not a noun. It's not a thing. It's not words. It is actions. Watch people's actions to know if they love you, not their words. End quote. She put some Bible verses after, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Obviously, this has been talked about. She's saying if he goes to jail, she'll bake up a cake with a file in it. If he needs help disposing of a body, she'll show up with shovels and a garbage bag. And this is incredibly incriminating. But I think it tells you exactly how enmeshed with Brian she was. If you hate my guts, I'll get new ones. What? And then there's a little dig here at Gabby, I believe. She's like, remember, love is not, a word. It's not something you say. It's something you do. Watch people's actions to know if they love you, not their words. She's saying to him, Gabby doesn't act like she loves you, but I do. You say that she loves you, but I'm the one that loves you. And she doesn't treat you right. She doesn't treat you as good as I do, so I love you and she doesn't. It's kind of, she's manipulating her son. Now, onto the Bible verse. The Bible verse says, quote, therefore I am certain that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor the ruling spirits, not things present, nor things to come, nor powers from above, nor powers from below, nothing in the entire created world can separate our love. Neither hostile powers, nor messengers of heaven, nor monarch of earth. Nothing has the power to separate us. And then she wrote Romans 8:38, extended version, exclamation point. And then she continues and says, nothing can separate us, not hatred, not hunger, not homelessness, not threats, not even sin, not the thinkable or unthinkable can get between us, not time, not miles and miles and miles, end quote. First of all, this further supports my belief that Roberta and Brian had an enmeshed relationship because it's a lot. It's very extra. She's doing too much. For your son, your adult grown son who's in a relationship, you're doing too much. But obviously, this letter's undated, so the big question is, when was it written? Roberta was asked about this during her deposition. When did she write the letter? Because obviously, if it was written after Gabby died, it would be further proof that Roberta not only knew what had happened, but that she was sending a clear message to her son that she would continue to support him, even to the lengths of covering up his crime, no matter what he did. The thinkable, the unthinkable, sin, whatever. Murder, doesn't matter. Now, Roberta claimed that she had written the letter before Brian and Gabby left for their trip in May of 2021. And I don't believe her because of a few reasons. Just one, because I don't, but the other one I'm going to tell you. So when asked why she wrote the letter, Roberta said, quote, because I think he thought he might be going away a little longer than I knew he was going away and I was going to miss him. And I just wanted to make sure he knew I loved him, even though he was going away. And I was disappointed, but it didn't matter. It was okay because we'd gotten into this little thing about, I thought you were going to live here and save your money. So I didn't want him to think I was disappointed in him or didn't love him. So whatever he decided to do, I would always, always love him, end quote. Let me bring you back to earlier in that deposition, when Roberta claimed that at the time Brian and Gabby left for their trip, she was under the impression that they were only going to New York for Gabby's brother's graduation. Obviously, not a cross-country long trip, just a quick visit to New York and back. She's now contradicting herself because she is saying that she thought Brian was going to be gone for a while and that he wouldn't be living with her. And so she wrote this letter a few days before he left, so he would know that even though she was upset with the situation, she was not upset with him and all was good between them. You said, Roberta, that you didn't know they were going cross-country and that they were going to be gone for a long time until they didn't come back for a while. And then they posted something, and then your daughter sent you something and was like, oh, they're out west. That's what you said. And she's called on this, right? The lawyers were like, wait, I thought you thought that they were only going to New York and coming back. Like, I thought you didn't know they were going for a long time. I thought you didn't know where they were going. And Roberta's now saying in her deposition, no, actually, before they left, I saw the empty storage unit, and I kind of put two and two together. Well, if that was the case, would you not have had a conversation with Brian during which you would ask him if he planned to be gone longer? But according to Roberta, that didn't happen because she didn't know the full extent of the trip until after Gabby and Brian had already left, right? She says they had a little falling out, her and Brian, where he was like, we're going to New York to go to Gabby's brother's graduation. And she's like, another trip? I thought you were saving money, blah, blah, blah. But she says she did not know they were going to be gone that long and where they were going until they didn't come back for a while. So you wrote this intense burn after reading love letter to your son when you thought he was just going to be gone for 4 or 5 days, a week tops? Really? I don't know. Maybe. Who am I? So she was asked why she wrote that burn after reading letter, and I'm going to read you Roberta's response, not just for the context of that response, but because of the way she words it, which shows you how little she viewed her son as an actual adult. She said, quote, I had waited for us to move in together. After I went back to New York, I couldn't wait until we could all live together, which I know is silly. He's a grown-up boy, but I thought he could live with us for a while and save his money and work and put it away. I know he wanted to buy a house, so I expressed I was disappointed, but he's a grown boy and he can do what he wants. And so I just thought maybe we were growing apart. And we were growing apart because he was growing up. He's not a little boy anymore, end quote. First of all, adult children should grow up and should grow apart to some degree from their parents so they can begin healthy relationships with other adults and start their own families, which then become their priority. It is not healthy to prevent your child from doing so or to make them feel guilty about it. Second of all, if it was just a letter expressing her unconditional love, then why write burn after reading on it, right? You'd think you'd want him to hold on to this. And Roberta's reasoning for this is just ridiculous. She said, quote, Gabby had bought Brian a book, and it was called Burn After Writing, and it was how you put your deepest thoughts down, and if they were embarrassing, you didn't want anybody else to read them, the advice on the book was to just burn it. So it was like a little joke that I knew he would get. He would know what I was referring to, and I did want him to get rid of it, not burn it, but throw it out so nobody could read it. It's an embarrassing note, end quote. Once again, first of all, yes, it is an embarrassing note. It's not something a mother should be writing her adult son. It's very intense. And if she had wanted to write it all out, because that's what she was feeling inside, and then burn it, like this alleged book that Gabby allegedly gave Brian advice to do, that would be one thing, completely understandable, but that's not what happened. You gave it to him. You gave him the letter. Second of all, Roberta's got jokes for days, man. Okay, jokes for days. She's a walking, talking joke herself. The Tide stick, a joke. The letter, a joke. Everything's a joke when it seems suspicious. Roberta's asked why she felt the need to write and tell Brian that nothing could ever make her stop loving him and nothing would ever divide them, and her response, once again, is telling. She said, quote, I guess I was just being over the top mushy emotional, just so he knew we were always, even if he grew up, he would always be my little boy. If he's 40, 50 years old, he'll always be my boy, and nothing could ever divide us, end quote. This isn't me not knowing how to read. This is her starting a sentence, deciding better of it, and then starting a new sentence. Roberta's asked about specific examples she gave, such as baking a file into a cake if Brian was in jail, or bringing garbage bags if he needed to get rid of a body. And the lawyers were like, hey, why would you think he'd be in jail? Or why would you think he'd need help hiding a body? And Roberta said, quote, I know, okay, but this is so crazy. Somebody had told me a joke, and I thought it was funny. And I told people at work, I told Brian, I thought it was the funniest joke. Somebody said to me, oh, you know, a good friend is somebody that shows up with garbage bags and a shovel. Oh, somebody you can call at 3 a.m. and they show up with garbage bags and a shovel, and they don't ask questions. Haha, that's so funny. Like, that's how you know a good friend. And I thought it was a funny joke. The person that told me said it was funny, and I told it to Brian. I thought it was such a funny joke, and I was referring to the joke, but I didn't have time to write out the whole joke, but I knew he would know the joke I was referring to, end quote. What? More jokes? More jokes, Roberta? More jokes to explain away incredibly suspect occurrences? That joke isn't even that funny, man. Let's be honest. It's pretty basic. It's like Facebook level humor. All right? That's like stupid memes from like the early 2000s. And who the hell is this person that told you this stupid joke? Because you just keep referring to them as the person. But clearly this joke was super memorable to you, so wouldn't that person who introduced this hilarity to your life also be memorable? Weird, man. And she like keeps talking about how funny it is. Like how funny it is. Like it's so funny. It's so funny. Keep in mind, Gabby's dead right now when she's being deposed. Brian killed her and hid her body, you know? And you still think this joke is that funny? I don't know what is wrong with this woman. And more than that, you aren't supposed to be your child's friend, okay? Like, oh, that's what a good friend does. Shows up at 3 a.m. with garbage bags and a shovel to help hide a body. You're not supposed to be your child's friend. You're supposed to be a guiding force in your child's life who teaches them the difference between right and wrong and who holds them accountable when they've done something wrong, all right? Now, Roberta, she's self-admittedly had problems with her children growing up and becoming adults and having lives of their own. She talks about in the deposition how she was struggling with her kids getting older and that she wished her kids would stay little forever. But do we have any evidence that she was like this with her daughter? Or was she just like this with Brian, the child she had become enmeshed with early in his life? I think it was just Brian, honestly, but let me know what you think. And this is going to bring us to the work of Professor Joan Orme at the University of Glasgow. She led a study looking into the causes of domestic violence, which showed that men who idolize their mothers are more likely to lash out at their partners, and she has called this Norman Bates syndrome. I'm pretty sure everyone knows who Norman Bates is, but for those of you who don't, I'll give you a quick breakdown. Norman Bates is a fictional character from Psycho, which was a 1959 novel by Robert Bloch. It was later made famous by Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 film adaptation. So Norman Bates is the owner and operator of Bates Motel. It's a small, isolated motel situated near his home. Norman appears mild-mannered, polite, and awkward. However, beneath his outward appearance, he harbors deep psychological trauma which manifests in his violent and unstable behavior. Norman's relationship with his mother, Norma Bates, was deeply dysfunctional and toxic, and at the time the story takes place, Norma is deceased, but we do get some insight into their dynamic, and we see that she was overbearing, manipulative, and emotionally abusive. She raised Norman in isolation, enforcing strict moral codes and instilling in him a fear of women, sexuality, and independence. Her love was possessive and smothering, discouraging him from forming relationships with anyone else. Now, Norman Bates's relationship with his mother is often analyzed through the lens of Freud's Oedipus complex and childhood trauma. Norman's inability to separate from her, the repression of his own desires, and the eventual emergence of an alternate personality to embody her all point to severe psychological breakdowns caused by prolonged abuse. Professor Joan Orme and the other psychologists who performed this study claim that men who put their mothers on a pedestal often become frustrated with their romantic partners when they fail to measure up. Orme said, quote, "These men rarefy their relationships with their mothers irrespective of how that relationship really was. No woman can live up to such high expectations of femininity and womanly behavior. The abuse on their partners stems from the sense of frustration and anger because their expectations are not being met," end quote. And the study worked with men who were convicted of physically abusing their partners, and nearly all of the study's findings showed that a mother's apparent behavior had a significant effect on the abuser's attitude towards his partner. Once again, obviously, I think this goes without saying, because we're just talking theoretically and we're just talking, kind of like, how does one thing relate to the other? This is not giving these men an excuse, nor is it giving a valid reason for why they abuse their partners. Okay? Everyone is responsible for their own actions. But like anything else, it does give context. In my opinion, it is very possible that Brian Laundrie, because of his unnaturally close relationship to his mother and her refusal to let him grow up in a normal and autonomous way, it caused him to never truly develop an identity of his own and to always search for who he was in someone else. He did not have the ability to be happy on his own or to know who he was or what he wanted on his own because he had not been allowed to go through his childhood development in a normal way. He determined who he was and what he wanted through the relationship with his mother. And when he found Gabby, he began to do the same through her. So when Gabby expressed any signs of wanting independence or having feelings or goals or dreams that were not aligned with Brian's, he felt a deep sense of betrayal. He feared abandonment, which would then leave him alone with the person he hated, right, aka himself, and his lack of coping skills or emotional intelligence led to his reaction being fear, possessiveness, manipulation, and anger. And when those reactions still didn't get him what he wanted from her, he became violent. So let's look at his artwork before we close out this video to see if we can identify some of these themes in that artwork. And I think I picked like 5 pieces. I put all of the artwork that Brian had into AI to have them sort of pull out any common themes and things, and then I focused specifically on randomly 5. I didn't pick and choose out of like a bias trying to make Brian look crazy. So we have first the trust no one piece, which it kind of looks like it's just scribbled on a piece of notebook paper or like a sketchbook, but it does show deep-seated paranoia, along with a sense of betrayal and a delusionment with others. There's this use of arrows pointing in all different directions that could also reflect internal conflict, confusion, or a lack of clear direction. This artwork does suggest that it was created by someone who's highly distrustful of others, possibly feeling isolated and or betrayed at the time of creation. The fragmented style, the urgent, bold text conveys a troubled mind, possibly fixated on themes of control and detachment. And by the way, those who developed healthy attachment styles in childhood, they do not fixate on detachment like this. Detachment is used by people who honestly don't have super secure attachment styles yet. And you can get more secure, but when you feel like you have to force yourself to detach from somebody or something or a situation because you're afraid that it's going to hurt you, it means that you don't trust yourself enough and you don't think you're strong enough to handle that hurt, which happens to everybody. So instead, you try to emotionally detach so as to protect yourself. So next, we have the piece that showcases like these distorted faces and then an upside down bird. Now, the bleeding or smeared mouth on these faces could symbolize suppression, silencing, or violence, possibly a representation of emotional pain or repressed anger. And birds, which would usually symbolize freedom or transcendence, Well, when placed upside down or inverted, it could symbolize fallenness, a loss of direction or destruction, and the use of repeated imagery could suggest obsessive thought patterns and intrusive ideas. Now, this piece with the bird and the faces, it hints at suppressed rage, victimization, or an internalized struggle with power or control. The repeated grotesque faces could symbolize anxiety, paranoia, or a fractured self-image, and the bird's inversion suggests a loss of freedom or the inability to escape something, possibly a reference to feeling trapped in a toxic or abusive dynamic, like maybe how Brian felt trapped in the dynamic with his mother. We now have the exploding red skeleton with outstretched arms. A very interesting piece. Skeletons often symbolize, obviously, death, decay, or even the essence of one's true self, and the splattering effect that is used in this artwork could suggest violence, destruction, or even an emotional breakdown. The skeleton's outstretched arms could be a gesture of surrender, possibly representing feeling hopeless or overwhelmed. The piece strongly conveys themes of destruction, inner torment, and a possible fascination with mortality. It might also reflect feelings of rage, self-destruction, or a loss of control. Given Brian Laundrie's life and behavior, this could indicate a mindset where violence or death as an inevitable or cathartic release. We then have the neon animal masked figure. It's surrounded by an intense neon glow with clawed hands. We have some more spattering marks here. Now, the use of a predatory animal mask suggests a desire to embody power, aggression, or dominance. The use of this predatory mask could indicate a desire to shed weakness and adopt a more powerful animalistic persona. Masks often symbolize hidden identities, repression, or dual personalities, and the use of all these unnatural neon colors, it does kind of create an intense, surreal atmosphere, which could possibly suggest an altered perception, emotional extremes, or dissociation. Now, another similar piece of artwork, it shows that same figure with the same wolf-tiger hybrid mask, but this time you can see his hands. They're blood-stained. They're holding weapons. The blood-stained hands and weapons strongly suggest violence, destruction, or an obsession with harm and control. And a deliberate halo placed around the figure's head could represent self-glorification, a distorted self-image, or even martyrdom, like someone who goes to their grave insisting the reason they killed their girlfriend was because it was what she wanted and it was what was best for her. Now, we have another piece that I always have been drawn to because it's kind of drawn on a paper, but the way he took a picture of it to put it on social, he's got like mouse traps around it. So it's like two skeleton Grim Reapers on either side of this herd of sheep, and then the stamps that he used to make the skeleton Grim Reapers, it's kind of arranged around the picture, but one of the stamps with the skeleton Grim Reaper is being held by a mouse trap, which is interesting. So the skeleton is a clear reference to death, mortality, possibly fate, and sheep often symbolize blind conformity or lack of control over one's destiny. The mousetrap around one of the skeleton stamps could indicate a sense of being trapped, doomed, or resigned to an inevitable fate. Now, this piece, I think, reflects fatalistic thinking, a sense of inevitability regarding death, or resentment towards those perceived as weak or conformist. I think that this piece covers all of those things, and I think that Brian sees himself as the skeleton Grim Reaper, and he's like trying to get power over all these sheep, which is the rest of the humans who, go into national parks and litter and who drink out of plastic bottles, and, just he had such a low opinion of human beings. But the stamp of the skeleton Grim Reaper being placed in a mousetrap, which if the skeleton Grim Reaper represents him, which I believe it does, it's showing that he wants all this power and control, and he thinks he knows the right way to do things, and he wants to do things, and he thinks if everybody listened to him, they would just be better, but he's being held back by something. He's trapped and prevented from being his full and complete self by something. Now, being raised by an overbearing, smothering mother who used guilt trips and emotional manipulation to keep her child from gaining independence could make someone feel that way, right? It could lead to long-term emotional, psychological, and relational struggles. This adult, Brian, in this situation, could feel emotionally trapped with a constant sense of obligation to their mother, and they may feel guilt for prioritizing their own life. They may believe that it's their job to keep their mother happy, even at the expense of their own well-being. And as an example, when Brian wanted to go away with Gabby, he did not tell his mother where they were going or how long they would be gone because he had experienced guilt trips from her before, and he didn't want her to interfere with this. That's why Roberta thought that there was some distance forming between her and Brian, because he had started to kind of align himself with Gabby more than he had aligned himself with Roberta. Roberta thought that he and Gabby were just going to New York for a short visit, and she gave him pushback even for that. after snooping around and finding a receipt for a storage unit. Now, the adult child, aka Brian, they may also struggle with decision making because their mother always made the decisions for them, and they may fear doing the wrong thing, constantly second-guessing themselves because they were conditioned to rely on their mother's approval. They could also have an unclear sense of self. They could feel like they weren't good enough, and they may have difficulty trusting their own emotions and feelings. And in a relationship, they're going to struggle with boundaries because their mother never allowed them to have any boundaries, and they were taught to put their mother's needs above their own. They may feel trapped. They may feel frustrated, resentful, but they were raised to believe that they couldn't actually feel those things or express them. They always had to be a good boy, so they're going to push all of these emotions down. They won't feel that they're allowed to have these emotions, which will then lead to emotional outbursts or shutdowns. And ultimately, until people like this begin to separate themselves from that person, until they recognize that guilt and manipulation are not love and that they are allowed to say no, and until they build emotional independence and learn how to set and maintain their own boundaries, they won't be able to have healthier, successful relationships with anyone else because they will simply repeat the same patterns over and over again, never finding satisfaction or happiness in another person because they were never allowed to find those things in themselves. We know that Brian Laundrie struggled with emotional regulation even before he and Gabby became a couple. 4 months before they started dating in October of 2018, Brian wrote in his journal, quote, "About a year ago, I went into a type of mania where I was smashing holes in the wall with my head, kicking through paintings, tearing whatever I was working on, pouring gasoline on myself to burn alive, but getting the lighter wet, parking out in Murderland, listening to music with a gun to my head, wrestling alligators. I wanted to die, and the weird thing is nothing's changed, but the timer's running down. Under the mattress I'm on is a loaded .357 Magnum revolver. A pull of the trigger and all my problems will be over," end quote. Wrestling alligators? What? What, you think he really did that? I mean, they did live in Florida. So Brian was in some sort of pain. Obviously, he was having some sort of identity crisis, feelings of despondence, hopelessness. But then he became Gabby's boyfriend, and it wasn't even an immediate change of tone. He didn't seem suddenly happy and glad to be alive. It seemed as if he felt that he'd found the person who would solve all his problems and take the pain away, or who could solve all his problems and take the pain away. But he felt deep down that she would abandon him and leave him due to his innate feelings of inadequacy, because he didn't have high self-esteem. He didn't think much of himself. He hated himself. So why would anyone else not hate him? Why would anyone else love him? Why would anyone else stick around when he wanted to get away from his own self? And he also didn't have an ability to form true and pure connections with others that didn't include manipulation or control. That's how he was taught. That's how he was raised, in my opinion. Another undated journal entry appears to refer to Gabby. And so at some point after Brian and Gabby get together, he wrote this in his journal. Now, was it when she was still alive or when she was dead? I don't know. But it says, quote, "The ocean pours out of her blue eyes and the fire is out. With one word, the pain is gone. Brian. Oh, how sweet she is to say we should be together. But you know when you walk out that door, she'll be gone forever again. You back in the car, haunted by the eyes you'll never look into again. The pain burns fresh because you know it's just tonight. You wake up and you're both free," end quote. I think this was written after he killed her. I think it was written after he killed her, and I think it was him remembering him killing her. Looking up, you're looking at her blue eyes, her saying his name, him getting in the car alone, knowing he'll never look into her eyes again. Pain is gone. And then it's just tonight you feel bad about it, and tomorrow you're going to wake up and you're both free. I don't know. What do you think? Obviously, once again, this is just my opinion, but I have a lot of experience with this kind of thing. I don't want to be too personal, but I have experience with, and I think a lot of people do, right? Maybe you've dated somebody who was like kind of a mama's boy, and it was just a constant thing that came between you. You know, like everything you did, the mother had to like be privy to. He called her like 5-6 times a day. She seemed to know things before you knew them. She seemed to know everything that was going on in your life. She was always showing up, reorganizing your kitchen, walking in without being invited, not respecting any of your boundaries ever. And then you would feel that your boyfriend or husband or partner was kind of aligned with his mother against you. Yeah, this is a sign that this mother raised her son to be a little bit too dependent, a little bit too enmeshed, and it's not healthy, because when a man finds his partner, his life partner, that is when he should start breaking free from his mother and now make his wife or his partner or whatever the main priority, and whatever family they build together is now his family. And no parent likes that, but you also know that it's what's best for your child, so you accept it. But those who can't accept it don't accept it because they don't really care what's best for their child. They hear what's best for them. And that's just my opinion, but it's very damaging. It's very damaging to the people who it happens to. It's very damaging to the people who they end up getting into relationships with or being close to. It's very, very damaging. And once again, to be very clear, Brian Laundrie does not get a pass. I don't care if he was hurt. I don't care if he did get messed up by his mother. A lot of people do, and a lot of people figure out this is not healthy. This is not good for my relationships. This is not good for my life, and I need to go to therapy, and I need to set boundaries with my mother, and I need to tell her, like, hey, either you respect me, my new life, my new relationship, and the boundaries I've set, or I'm going no contact. A lot of people do that, but Brian didn't, and a lot of people don't do that, and they never have happy, healthy, or successful relationships, and that's it. But let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section. Have you known a mother like this? Did you have a mother like this? Have you dated somebody who had a mother like this? Do you think that Roberta Laundrie really wrote that burn after reading letter because she just thought Brian was going away on like a week-long trip? I need to hear your comments about everything right now in the comment section, okay? But also, don't forget to like the video if you liked it, share it if you think it's worth sharing, and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, stay kind, stay beautiful, and stay safe. I'll see you very, very soon. Bye.
What a levee don't break now. And the bottle's gone straight.